get there are literally thousands probably of questions to ask if God did exist, right? And you could talk to it, whatever it is, that would make sense to ask. But if I had to ask one question, there was one question I could ask to God, assuming God was the type of being that you could communicate with and ask a question to. And I guess I'm going to ask it from a very Christian Catholic lens because that's how I was brought up. So there's probably some of that bias in it. But my question would be, why have you made it so easy for people to go down the wrong path, quote unquote wrong path, and we'll talk about what that is, in the name of you? By that I mean there's a belief, I think a pretty widely held belief, that I think the church perpetuates, that God doesn't have to prove themselves to you. You don't have to, nor will you likely ever understand why God does what it does. But there's a meaning and there's a purpose and there's a vision and there's something that God is driving towards. And our job isn't to understand that. Our job is to go with what God tells us, ultimately. That faith that we place, that leap of faith, is meant to do that. If something horrible happens, we're meant to believe, well, God has a plan. God did it for a reason. And my question isn't, what the hell is your problem? Why do you let these bad things happen? Right? That's a valid question, right? But in the way that the answer is framed, it could be true that those bad things are happening for a legitimate reason. It's hard for us to understand, but that's the point. My question is, why would you set up such a dynamic where we never know for sure? You never prove yourself to us. You never have to. And we're meant to just trust and keep this faith that whatever it is that happens, it was meant to be. Because the dynamic that creates in the human world, right, in society, given human nature, is it makes it so easy for people to either intentionally or unintentionally manipulate that. It makes it so easy for people who think they're doing the right thing, who think they're following the word, of God or whatever it might be, but to be hurting others, frankly, to be doing it in a way that isn't the way that God intended, and they would never know it, because that's the dynamic that's been created. You've created a dynamic where if somebody tells me, and they are in a position of power in a church or whatever structure they're in, if somebody tells me they have some knowledge of how God functions, and that I'm meant to just trust it and believe it and go with it, even if my eyes and my experience sees and tells me something different, even if it feels like it's wrong, my job is to go with it. My job is to believe and trust that God has a plan. But I can never know, right? There's no proof. I just have to trust it. So if that person or that organization is incompetent or malicious or just misguided, I wouldn't know, because it would look exactly the same. I might have concerns, I might have questions, there might be things that seem off to me, but that's not my business. That's above my pay grade. I'm meant to just go with it because God has a plan, and there's always something that it's working towards, and it's something that we can never understand, and they never have to prove it to us. Well, why would you create that dynamic? Why? The only logical reason you can imagine is you did it on purpose. You wanted that dynamic. You wanted people to be put in a position where they couldn't know, and they could so easily mess up in your name. Why? Why would you want that dynamic to be in place? It's almost perfectly designed for it to be distorted and bastardized. It's almost perfectly designed for people to get it wrong. Not because they want to necessarily, but because the dynamics at play are designed for it. They may get lucky, some. They may get it right. They may hitch their wagon to the right horse or the right God or whatever it is, the right person, the right organization. But they would never know. And I don't know. This is why I would ask God this question, right? I assume somebody might say, well, you just know. That's the point. You just know. Maybe. But humans are imperfect. I have to believe there's millions of humans out there that think they just know. They think they've just got it, right? Because that's such, what is that? That's nothing. I can't grab that. I can't touch that. I can't test that. I can't see that. So when you say you just know, do you know how many people are out there that think they just know, but the other group doesn't, even though they think they just know? And again, that's the dynamic that's been created for exactly that to happen. For people to never really know, to never really question, to never really understand if what they're doing is the right path. And there's no way for them to know for sure. Seemingly, right, if you look at it through the lens that I am, Christian, kind of Catholic view, Judeo-Christian, until the end, until it's over. And then it's revealed to you, seemingly, right? That's at least the way that we're told it. But that's a roll of the dice. That's a lottery ticket that you're hoping pays out at the end. It makes it really hard to imagine that there's a way in which I could have deliberately taken action, right? Free will, because that's often what you'll hear is that free will exists. God wants humans to figure it out. Okay, but from where I sit, from a very logical, kind of analytical, pragmatic viewpoint, it's very hard for me to envision anything I could do in this life that would help me overcome that dynamic. That would help me say, okay, if I do this, maybe it's hard, maybe it's difficult, maybe it's challenging, maybe it's confusing, but if I dedicate myself to it, it gives me a better chance to get it right. It gives me the opportunity at the end of the day, at the end of the life, when it's revealed to me to say, okay, that's what I thought. I did it that way. Good, we're good. No, I don't see it. I don't see it the way God has presented to me what I could do to ensure in that. Other than try and do the best we can in the hopes that if we're really thoughtful and we really care about other people, the actions we take, the things we believe will lead to a better outcome. And even that is super ambiguous and super intangible and uncertain. But that's not, again, the dynamic isn't one, at least the way it's been taught to me and positioned to me, of very open like that, of that there's not necessarily one way. There isn't just a right way to do it. It's more of an overall kind of mindset or approach that you're trying to live a good life. The way that at least organized religion positions it is that there is a right way. This is the way you need to do it. And it could be anything, right? It could be Catholicism, it could be Judaism, it could be Islam, it could be Hindu, it could be anything. Once you've created that dynamic, I don't see how we can win here. I don't see how we can figure this out and achieve what seemingly God wants us to achieve in any effective or efficient way. And that's confusing to me. I mean, the most likely scenario is God would say, I think, these people are full of shit. The things they're telling you, that's not what I would have told you. That's not the design of it. That's not the way it's supposed to be. But how are we supposed to figure that out? Because for the individual, on a day-by-day basis, when we question that, when we say, hey, that can't be right, the church can't be right, making it up, right? The Pope can't be right, whatever it is, that's blasphemous, seemingly. That's the wrong way to do it. We now have this dilemma of, I could challenge and see if there's a better way, see if something's wrong here, but inherently, by definition, the way this thing is set up, that makes me a bad person or a bad Christian or a bad whatever, follower of God. So I'm in a no-win situation. Why? Why did you do that?